What's happened in the last decade is the internet has become this place that is hyper optimized on a particular dimension, which is engagement. All of those inventions I just mentioned were breakthroughs in user engagement. And what user engagement really means is grabbing your attention and keeping it as long as possible. Every extra second is an additional point in the engagement bucket, and it's an additional ad that you can get served.
I'm Amy Woodall, and this is The Conscious Habit, a show from the People Forward Network. We're teaching you how to incorporate love and consciousness at work, at home, and the world at large. You just heard from Royce Branning and Oliver Hill. They are the founders of ClearSpace, a technology that is allowing us to preserve our attention in this digital world. And in this conversation today, we talk about this incredible app that I initially downloaded and sought them out to come onto the podcast, and how they are helping us tap into our own consciousness more effectively by putting in layers that are between us and our addiction to our phone. Take a listen. Conscious Habit listeners, our guest today, I stumbled upon their product, I don't know, maybe 6 weeks ago or so. And the minute I downloaded it, I was an instant fangirl. I was like, holy shit, everyone needs to know about this. This is life-changing. I want my kids to download this. I want every friend that I know to download this. And so I proceeded with doing what any good human would do when they're obsessed with something. I started stalking the founders. Literally, I found them on LinkedIn. I'm like, add me as a friend. And then I found on this little app we're going to be talking about today that you could call a founder, and that's exactly what I did. I called, I left them a message, and it must have been convincing enough because here they are today joining us on the podcast. So founders of ClearSpace, Royce Branning and Oliver Hill join us today, and I'm so excited to learn about their mission that they have with this app and how it can help us all change and evolve our consciousness. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having us, Amy.
Yeah, we're excited to be here. And this way that you found us is absolutely our favorite way to get to talk to users and meet them. We've been consistently surprised and just grateful that the people that we're building this product for are super cool like you and invite us to do awesome things like this. So thanks for having us.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. I just need to first state that I feel like you guys need to write a children's book called The Adventures of Royce and Oliver, because they're really cool names. Like which one's the turtle, which one's the hare. It's
We actually talk about that. Like, we think that in the skew of male name distribution, we're both roughly at the same amount of uncommonness, where people might know one or two Olivers, one or two Royces, and it sometimes helps with cold outreach. It just seems like not a name you would make up if you had nefarious intentions. It's just they parse as friendly names.
I love that it works in your favor. So anybody listening, if you have children on the way, just give them some odd names. It might help them in life. Well, guys, let's start off by telling the audience, what is this genius app that you all have come up with?
Yeah, ClearSpace is the mobile app that we built, and it helps people reduce their screen time by adding intentionality exercises to app opens. So if you want to go on Instagram or TikTok in the middle of your day and you're a ClearSpace user, before you can open the app, you have to complete a centering exercise. That could be taking a deep breath, doing a push-up, completing a squat. And then after that, you make what we call an intentional decision about whether or not you actually want to be spending time on that platform.
I think it's genius. And, Oliver, if you want to dive in for us, what does it do for the human mind? Why ClearSpace in this interception? What does it do in kind of helping to interrupt the way these unconscious or subconscious mind works?
Totally. So we're in the business of behavior change, and most of behavior revolves around stimulus and response and the habit loops that we build up when we repeatedly do things. And so you do something that is rewarding, you instantly get a reward for it, and your brain is more inclined to do that thing in the future. And at the core, what we're doing is breaking that habit loop. We're inserting a pause between the stimulus of, let's say, tapping the Instagram icon and the reward of receiving the dopamine from it. And in the long term, breaking that habit loop is what causes lasting change. So we say that we are in the business of digital environment change. We want to create digital environments for people that are in line with their goals and in line with what they want their habits to be, not the bottom lines of big tech.
I love this so much because I don't think that we realize how much that damn phone controls us. We think that we're the controller of it. But even in downloading the app, what I recognized was how many times I might click on an app and not even truly realize I'm clicking on it. And likely what would happen is before using ClearSpace, I would probably be on the app for several minutes before I was consciously aware. So for example, how many listeners, I want y'all to raise your hands. I'm gonna count them right now. How many of you open your email app without even realizing it? How many of you will go on vacation, set up a vacation autoresponder, and you know your ass is still checking that email when you roll out of bed at 7 a.m. or whatever it is? You're checking it on the beach. You're checking it at dinner. And I love that the app that you all have created is you can attach it to anything on your phone, right? It could be your social channels, your emails. And what I notice is just by it even popping up that interceptor, I would go, oh, I actually don't even want to be on this app. Like, I don't even need to finish the centering exercise. I don't even want to be here. So it really is a genius interception of just the automatic response. What is it what motivated you all to build this? What was your own experience, or what were you seeing in the world where you were saying, hang on a second, I think we need something to help us with this, phone thing?
Yeah, I think it helps to talk a little bit about how Oliver and I arrived into, it's going to sound weird to say, but adulthood. I'm 28 years old and Oliver's 27, which, depending on where you draw the line, means that we are either the youngest millennials or the oldest Gen Zs. That more importantly means that when we were 13, we got social media, 12, 13, and every coming of age moment in our teenage years was influenced by the experience of living in the digital realm. And for us, that meant that we kind of cultivated these dependencies on our digital environment and social media very early on. And for Oliver and I, it was our early 20s where we kind of woke up to the fact that we had addictions that we didn't opt into. And so what that meant for us as software engineers, people that knew tech, is we go, wait, this is not cool. I want to get promoted at work. I have people that, we're starting to lead, families that we're starting, or, relationships are trying to evolve. And we're like, this thing is at odds with the person I'm trying to become. And our response to that is, well, let's re-engineer it. Let's change the game. And so for us, the question was really simple, is like, is this thing serving the ends that you want it to, or is it serving its own ends? And so we said, it's not agreeing with what I want. Let's change the rules of it. And the most effective place we found to do that was on the smartphone, because you carry it with you everywhere you go.
Genius. And how many of us are like, we might notice we left our phone before we left our children, which is why there are little dings that say, hey, don't forget to check to see if your kid's back there. You could not go very long without your phone without knowing, oh crap, I don't have my phone. There is a real addiction wrapped around this. And I was doing a little investigating before our interview and found that some of the stats that are out there that we spend as Americans, and you guys might even be able to break it down based on generation, but as Americans, we spend about 4 hours and 25 minutes on our phone per day. If we did that math, I have not done it, but if we did that math of like how many years of our life is ultimately spent attached to technology, that's not even including the time we're on our computers, at work. And then somewhere between 45 and 58% of people are addicted to their phone, that really it is controlling them. They are not controlling it. So in your path of this realization for yourselves, and then going out and building this app for you, what kind of difference did you notice in your life when you started to use ClearSpace?
I think that the biggest difference has just been the impulse open. Like that was the main killer of like productivity for me, and just intentional usage. Like we talk about intentional usage, and what we really mean is aligning where we spend our attention with where we intended to spend it. And so like there was this massive gap in my behavior about when I thought about my life in the digital world, how I wanted that time to be spent versus when I would look back on a given week where it actually got spent. And the two biggest things that we built into this that have been effective for me personally are, one, just interrupting the initial open of a website or an app, and then two, limiting the amount of time that you're going to be there for each session. You're just asking yourself, by the way, how long do you want to be in this app? And then pulling it out at the end. So like those two things, I think, form the core of what we do and have made the biggest difference.
I love that built-in intentionality too, where I like that it says, how much time do you want to spend here? You want to be here 1 minute, 2 minutes, 5 minutes, 10 minutes? Notice it doesn't have an option that says, do you want to doom scroll for 2.5 hours tonight? That is not an option. I would imagine it's very intentional. Royce, what was your experience when you started using the app? Yeah, my gut says you guys started using it before you started, sharing it with the world. So how did it change things for you?
Totally. Yeah. I mean, we didn't even build it as something that was like initially intended to be shared with the world. We didn't start with the idea like, let's start a company. What should we do? It was, this is a problem. And the first build of the app, Oliver and I actually leading up to forming this company had both independently been working on different ways to interrupt our addictive phone usage or computer usage. And one weekend I had noticed in an update to iOS on the iPhone that there's an opportunity for me to interrupt this app open. And I put it on my phone. It was really janky. It wasn't the nice, elegant breathe screen we have today. It was literally just like, don't go to this app right now. And instantly it felt like my screen time cut in half, just that small little effort. And we uploaded it to the App Store, and random strangers. I mean, Oliver and I both have been building apps since we were in those teenage years, kind of longtime coders. I've never put anything into the world that immediately got feedback the way that this app did. Random strangers on the internet, not unlike yourself, Amy, like reached out to us, and they were writing us essays about how this small nudge was fixing their relationships, lifting them out of mental health crises. And that is really what propelled us from, wow, this is a cool little trick to help us be more productive at work, into, oh, we need to build the intentionality layer of the internet. Like, we need to allow people to relate to their devices the way that they want to, not the way that they are.
I love that. I love that you say the intentionality layer of the internet. Dive in a little bit more. Like, what does that mean? And even beyond ClearSpace, what are some ways that listeners can sort of lean in and say, okay, I bite. Like, I don't want my technology to boss me around. The algorithms clearly know how to keep me addicted. What can I do? So what is that intentionality layer?
Yeah. So something we think about a lot is most people in their heads kind of have a digital protocol that they imagine for themselves. And you might hear this in a bunch of different ways, like, I don't check Slack after 8 p.m. or I don't scroll social media in bed. These kind of little tricks that people have for how they imagine spending their life online. But we don't have a good place for people to actually encode these protocols. And if we look at a similar realm where this happens, like let's say people's diets, you hear similar things like, I'm a vegetarian, or I'm a paleo, or even something as complex as like, I don't eat gluten on the weekends. These are food protocols in the way that people are starting to converge on digital protocols. But we don't really have the language for this yet, and we definitely don't have the tools for it yet. And ultimately, our vision is to be a place where you come to us with a digital protocol, or we actually help you construct one that's in line with your goals. And then we help you stick to it across every place where there's a screen: phone, computer, smart TV, whatever. You told us you don't want to check Slack after 8 p.m. It's after 8 p.m. Are you absolutely sure this is a good usage of your time? And by the way, what do you want the rules to be around, like times when you can have an exception to the protocol you set up for yourself? Ultimately, that's what being the intentionality layer is to us. It's the missing layer of the internet that is in charge of helping you set out to spend your attention the way you want to.
I like that, because you're right. People do have these sort of mental boundaries where they're like, here's the agreement I've made for myself. But it's easy to break that discipline and easy to break that promise to ourselves, especially like the ding goes off. And for those of us listening who are business owners, or we have busy business lives, there can be a pace addiction that we have. There can be an addiction to being needed, wanted, responding. I need to respond immediately, especially in the US. Y'all, like, we put our autoresponder on and we're like, I'm so sorry that you won't be able to reach me for 4.5 minutes during this time at this, it's like, take a breath. So I love this concept of the intentionality layer having really tools that can help you lean into the discipline that you have on a mental level, but they're going to give you the technical tools to be able to do so. When did the app officially launch out there in the world? And then what kind of data have you been able to compile based on the time that it's, saving or what it's able to give back to people?
Yeah, we released the app in the summer of 2022, and in its latest form in early 2023 is kind of when things really kicked off. That's when we were participating in the Y Combinator Accelerator program in San Francisco, and we really got to take things to a new level of distribution and access for people, really. But yeah, that trajectory has been really exciting because I told this story of this first initial hacky build that started to get some organic traction. And the way things go, people told friends and told friends and told friends. And along the way, what's been really exciting for Oliver and I is we get to hear how it's working and how it needs to work better for people. While we're continuing to build a solution that works well for us, we're also hearing feedback in real time from people about like the new problems that are cropping up in their lives and kind of continuing to build along that trajectory.
One thing that's been fascinating to see in the data set is kind of what you mentioned, Amy, about that moment of like, wait, I don't even want to open this app right now. And in putting this out there, we learned a stat that, I don't know, we might have a unique perspective on even being able to see into the stat, but more than half of app opens on social apps are unintentional. They're compulsive rather than intentional. And so when you just give people 10 or 15 seconds of friction, they opt to not continue to the app. So that was a pretty amazing statistic, I think, that we learned along the way. Of the majority of social media usage is compulsive rather than intentional.
It is interesting. We kind of have this like boredom epidemic. I'm guilty of this. I mean, listen, y'all, I downloaded the app for a reason, okay? I might teach consciousness to the world. It doesn't mean I live there 100% of the time. I'm still human, And I didn't know that's what it was, but I was looking for what is this intentionality layer? And I caught myself a couple of times closing out of an app and then immediately going to reopen the app. And I was like, oh shit, I wonder how many times I've done this. How many times have I closed out my email and immediately gone back in? And I had no idea. And so I love that you like the friction, it forces us to be conscious, to say, do you really want to be here? And also like, why am I here? That's what I have found it's also done for me is it's made me question kind of like, why is this important? And the fact that you might have to wait 5 or 10 seconds to access it is also like, do I want to do that or not? By the way, I love the squat challenge. You may have caught that Royce mentioned that early on. You could choose a challenge for yourself. And at one point in time, I was like, okay, let's do a challenge. I've got to do a squat for every 1 minute of time that I'm spending in these apps. Ooh, and those buns were burning. I didn't realize how much time I needed on my email or to go check my LinkedIn or whatever. And I was like, hey, this is actually pretty good. I'm doing a little exercise. So
Let's go.
Genius, genius on those levels. Has there been a, when you're hearing back from people or even in your own data measurement, what are you seeing? Is there a 20% reduction in time? Are you able to measure that and how much, time is reduced for people and adding this friction?
We have a couple different approximations of how much each person's getting saved. And then generally, anecdotally, the one that we hear most often is people coming back and saying, I cut my screen time in half immediately, which is a really cool barometer and lines up really cleanly with that 50% of the time compulsive usage. But we like to roll a lot of these stats up globally to look at kind of the mass impact rather than, everybody's journey is a little bit different. Not all screen time is bad screen time, et cetera. We were actually taking a look at this the other day. In the last 6 months, we've saved users over 300 years of wasted time was the stat. And that's kind of our like get out of the bed in the morning stat is like, today you're going to go to work and fight to take back people's wasted time for them on an order that is much greater than your time spent to do it. So that's a really fun one. And speaking of the squat to scroll challenge, every time we've gotten these different feedback and ideas from users about how we can evolve and make this friction even more powerful, we've seen the average user time reduction kind of creep up. So we're, the first big launch was like, what if we just add some friction? It's like, oh, that makes a really big difference. And then it's like, okay, what if we add in some aligned quotes that remind you of like your value system? Okay, like that's chipping away a little bit more. And then it's like, okay, what if we gave you a physical activity? And some people are like, no, not for me. I want the breath. And other people like you, Amy, are like, I want to get some squats in right now, which has been really cool to see. And that's kind of the feedback loop that keeps us fired up and keeps us evolving. And it's really indicative that like this problem on the surface seems kind of simple, like, oh, okay, just block yourself from doing it. But it's actually really complex because people use these apps for different reasons, and there's different antidotes rather, that like can come in, administer to them. A fun stat that we just crossed was 1 million push-ups done by ClearSpace users who were earning minutes on their phone. So all these different kind of challenges are really working their way into people's personal digital protocols in a way that's really exciting.
Ladies, imagine taking time away to work on you. Meditation, yoga, transformational work, a chance to have grand adventures and build lasting relationships. Desiree Garcia and I founded High Vibe Tribe Retreats to create just that. And if you're curious about joining us on our next retreat, head over to highvibetriberetreat.com, link in the show notes.
That is exciting. And for generations to come, future generations, thank you for you creating some of these interceptions and people being able to be more present and aware and okay with boredom. And I want to even like pull it back out from the app for a little bit. Let's just talk about sort of technology addiction in your own experience and what the studies you've had to do, to go bring this to the world. And I would imagine to go through funding and, all of that fun stuff that you get to do out in, you're just outside of Silicon Valley, right? You guys are
we're in the heart of it.
Yeah, you are in the heart of it. And so the fun stuff you got to do, what are you seeing? What are the trends? I mentioned some like 4.5 hours. And Royce, I think you bring up a good point. I mean, it could be that you are doing email, you are listening to podcasts, that sort of thing. But let's say roughly 4.5 hours, but 58 at the highest percentage of people are addicted. What does that mean for us as humans? What is this phone addiction truly doing to us?
You can kind of walk back the last decade of your life and seeing this happen in real time, feature by feature. Like, I remember when Reddit used to have multiple pages. You had to go to page 1, then page 2, and then they rolled out an infinite scroll where you were just forever scrolling. And the second they did this, every other website picked it up. The infinite scroll was ubiquitous. And the same thing happened with Facebook's notification bell with the little red dot, and Snapchat invented stories, Instagram follows suit. Facebook follows suit shortly after. TikTok comes out with short form content and everybody follows suit. We have Instagram Reels, YouTube Shorts, even LinkedIn's jumping on that train. And so what's happened in the last decade is the internet has become this place that is hyper optimized on a particular dimension, which is engagement. All of those inventions I just mentioned were breakthroughs in user engagement. And what user engagement really means is grabbing your attention and keeping it as long as possible. Every extra second is an additional point in the engagement bucket, and it's an additional ad that you can get served. And so when we zoom out and look at the state of the internet, what we really see is a place that we're very set up to fail. We're navigating a landscape that has been genetically engineered for the last decade to undermine our goals, really, and serve us ads. And so what we think our job is to do, and what we see the state of technology as, is can we come up with the same breakthroughs in intentionality that happened on the dimension of engagement? Can we recruit the venture capital resources? Can we hire the best minds in the world? Can we point the same engine of progress at intentionality that has been pointed at engagement? And so far, the answer is yes. We have some really fantastic investment partners that have been just amazing to work with. And our founding team is just killer. And like zooming out, that is very much how we see it. We want to make the same progress on intention and alignment that has been made on engagement.
I love that. And it is helpful, y'all, to think about this. Like, there's a game that has been designed, and many of us are unknowingly playing the game. And in return, we have given it our attention, which is the most sacred thing we have. The only thing we have in this lifetime that we can never make more of is time. You can make more money. Many things are abundant. Time is the thing that is limited. And so, this precious commodity, and I'm sure it pops up in one of those, one of the quotes that you all give, but right, where attention goes, energy flows. And if that's not there, you can add that one. And maybe we'll have an Amy Woodall quote there at some point.
Yeah, let's get one in there. No, it reminds me of one of my favorite quotes from the Breathe Screen by Viktor Frankl, which talks about, between stimulus and response, there's space. And in that space lies our ability to choose and ultimately our freedom. And I think one of the things that we think about is like, okay, Oliver and I, we actually, if you can't tell, we are very fascinated by the systems that are engaging people in their attention. On a technical level, it's an interesting thing to observe, and it's also a very scary thing to observe. On the other side, like that system, as you say, is pointed at maybe the most precious resource we have, and it covets it. Like it wants that thing. And so, like, what happens when it gets it? Well, we're kind of seeing, Jonathan Haidt, anxious generation. We're seeing rapid spikes in mental health issues. We're seeing, relational collapse. We're seeing a lot of the things. And this kind of comes back to me and Oliver's story. Like, we wake up as 25-year-olds in a life that is like inextricably bound with the digital world, that we're not super happy about what it's doing to us. And we feel like that is kind of the pulse on the ground for our entire generation, but also kind of everyone. We weren't the only ones that got indoctrinated by the internet. We feel like people are ready to reclaim the space that got kind of like sucked out of the air when the internet came for everything that we kind of cared about in some ways.
Maybe, you guys can have a contribution to world peace through the work that you're doing. If people can spend a little less time on social media spreading misinformation, we can have a happier land. But I am curious from either one of you, who, what are some of the things that you've learned about those inner workings that shocked you? What are some of the things that were like, holy shit, that's terrifying?
The biggest one for me has just been the power of so-called A/B testing. Every technology company does this. When they want to figure out what color to make a button or what text they should put on a page, they will just run two variants of it. They'll put a blue button and a red button, give it to 50% of the population, and see which one does better. This is happening all the time on every website on Earth. And when you close that feedback loop and you have like an automated process that is testing new variants of something at all times, measuring them on the dimension of engagement, and then redeploying like the new learnings site-wide and remeasuring it, you just have this like unbelievably far-reaching feedback loop that is powered by billions of eyeballs at all times. And it's really hard to overstate how optimized for attention warfare something can become when you have a feedback loop this big and that has run this many millions of experiments on which tiny little variant performs better at capturing us.
It's like red pill, blue pill. It's
exactly.
We are in the matrix. Royce, what about for you? What was the astonishing insights that you've learned?
I think it's similar to this hyperactive engine that is pointed at the bottom of our brain stems, but something to do with, for me, I think observing the difference between intentional and unintentional engagement with technology. Occasionally, Oliver and I will go home with like broken builds of the app on our phone because we're building it during the day, right? So like most days we have a working build of ClearSpace on our phone because it's a great app and we love it and it works for us. Some days we are in the middle of changing something, updating a feature, and we use like, these test builds that we're making sure work for the general population on our phones, and it breaks. And the immediacy with which my brain snaps back into just susceptible. Like I'm pretty proud of like how aligned I am in terms of my digital usage. Man, I don't stand a chance against this environment. Like I can have all my techno philosophy coded, written out. I can have everybody holding me accountable. But at the end of the day, like you're bringing, maybe to reach for some analogy, like a knife to a gunfight or any type of uneven playing field that you want to paint. That's what you're playing in the current digital realm. And so I'm surprised with how I've read all the books. I've talked to great people. I've thought about this a lot, and I still really, really need an environment change to have a fighting chance. So I think that's what I've really learned about it.
It's good to know that. And I think for us to be like, it's not that there's something wrong with me, because a lot of times we'll be like, I just need to be more disciplined. What is wrong with me? But in truth, like, it is designed to hook your dopamine, and dopamine is this addictive thing, and we don't even mean to, but it wants more and it wants more and it wants more. And I have doom scrolled plenty of times. You know, trust me, as my kid was graduating last year and we lost both of our dogs within a week. I laughed because it's traumatic. We lost both of our dogs within a week, and then my kid was like graduating and leaving us, you know, within like weeks from that. And so I doom scrolled on, you know, just crying at old pictures. But even the dopamine like effect of that is like, it's terrible and this is traumatic, but I can't stop. And, you know, and then you kind of have this dopamine hangover for 2 days of like, why do I find no satisfaction in life? Why is nothing seem happy? I mean, Oliver, you leaned in and you were like, yes. What is that? What is that dopamine after like hangover?
Just my lean in was just very simple resonance with the point you're making, which is that I have 100% felt just totally zapped after I wasted a day scrolling YouTube or whatever it is. Like the thing that's going on there is our dopamine receptors are becoming saturated, and the amount of stimulation they need to feel satisfied is going up and up and up with the amount of stimulation we're giving them. And so it's exactly like you say, like nothing will satisfy that until they slowly deplete back down to normal levels.
Mm-hmm. The amount of people who will scroll as they're watching TV, like they're like, okay, I am binging this show, but also simultaneously I'm kind of listening to this, but we're kind of hooked at many, many different areas. And I'm curious, you know, the leaders who are listening here today, why should they care about this? You know, where might this addiction be getting in the way of all of the goals they have lined out for their organization?
I mean, I think on every dimension, you can talk about personal productivity and just like hours won back to achieve tasks or time with family to rest and recoup. I think personally, the most powerful one for me is the dormant cycles of your brain that lend themselves to creativity and empathy that get compromised if you're filling every waking moment with input. Our brains need boredom and cycles to process events. And we're just kind of getting started this, but everything that I've witnessed in my life with regard to good leadership and people that are encouraging others is that they take time to think about them, and they take time to take care of their own business too. And those are the two things that if I have an ultimate why, you know, maybe in the most compromised state, I really want to scroll or I'm bored or something like this, like my ultimate why ends up being related to the fact that there are people around me that need me to be at my best. And I want to make sure that I'm protecting my attention to allocate it to them. And then just like thinking about the chain reaction of that in and amidst your organization, I think is like the biggest why I can think of.
It's really good to think that there's a reason why your best ideas come when you're out for a walk or you're in the middle of exercise or you're in the shower. And it's because we don't have all of this other stimulus around us that our brain can go, oh, thank God, a moment of silence so we can actually think here. And yeah, I think that's great. Like lack of creativity if we're always filled in. Do you guys have any stats to share on like how much of the time in our scrolling and sort of doing these things that are just these habits, how much of that's happening during the workday?
That can be hard to get active stats on, but I don't know, Oliver, if you have any quick pulls on just like looking through things. But I think from a zoomed out perspective, there's not a rapid change from work hours to non-work hours. We do see spikes in usage around like bedtime hours, you know, first thing in the morning, going to bed. But when you talk about the threshold between, you know, 2 p.m. or let's say 5 p.m. and 6 p.m., or maybe most people are like working and then not working, there's not a lot of change, which would suggest that your working hours people's work is competing with social media for their attention throughout the entire day, and often they're giving into it.
Not very demure or mindful, is it? Okay, friends, that's a TikTok reference. If you have not been on, I did 15 squats so I could watch 3 minutes of that video. Okay.
There you go.
Oliver, any thoughts on the stats or working time? I mean, Royce, you shared the consistency there, but any other thoughts on why leaders should really care about our addiction to our phone?
I think Royce nailed it. It is about letting the once quiet moments of your day be quiet again so that the thoughts that need to spring up can spring up. Like you're riding a bus and, before you were a ClearSpace user, that time would have been absolutely consumed by Instagram, let's say, or whatever your app of choice is. And letting your mind wander means remembering that a friend's birthday is coming up, means remembering that you haven't given your grandma a call in a while, means remembering that your roommate's going through something and reaching out to those people. And it just has made all the difference in my life.
Gives us a chance to be thoughtful humans, which is that's pretty damn good. That's pretty good. Guys, any parting thoughts, anything that you want our additional sort of takeaways you want our listeners to walk away with?
Yeah, I'd issue a brief challenge. You asked earlier, Amy, about kind of just like generally things that people can do in this realm. We spend all our day thinking about this. Of course, our application ClearSpace is great and is going to do all the things that we've talked about. I would encourage people to get home tonight and shut off their phones for an hour or two. I don't actually think this is a sustainable protocol. We kind of need these devices, but I think some of what we've talked about here at the end, creativity, empathy, feeling like a kid again, is something we hear a lot from people. And the most acute representation of that I've found in my life is if I can get the nerve to completely shut off my phone for a couple hours right when I get home from work, it is potent to see like the brain cycles come back online, and to be living in the present moment kind of makes you want that more. And we think ClearSpace is a way to like consistently kind of dose that back into your life. So that would be my challenge to the listeners is like, take a little 2-hour digital detox tonight, see what it's doing to you, and then invest in it with tools like ClearSpace and practices like, putting your phone in the other room.
Excellent. Well, guys, where can they find the ClearSpace app? How do our listeners go find this magical tool?
We are available on the Apple App Store and the Google Play Store. ClearSpace, all one word.
Awesome. Green bubbles and blue bubbles, welcome. I love the inclusivity.
Green bubbles and blue bubbles.
I love the inclusivity. And guys, if you happen to go check that out, there's a free 7-day trial. I didn't even, as soon as I paid for it and was on it for 5 minutes, I was like, take my money. And you can plug in that you've heard about it from The Conscious Habit. So where else can people follow what you guys are doing in the world?
Best place is to get the app, and we'll get information to you as needed. We try to respect that space, and most of what we're doing is happening there.
We do also have a newsletter on our website, which is getclearspace.com, that you can subscribe to.
Awesome. And you guys too can call a founder.
That's right. We'd love to hear from you.
Awesome. Guys, thank you so much. Thank you for putting this out into the world. I am grateful for that. And thanks for sharing your time with us today.
Appreciate it, Amy. Thanks so much for having us.
Thank you, Amy.
Before we wrap up this episode, here are my 3 takeaways and how we can incorporate them into our lives. Number 1, create a little friction. That is the concept of the app that they've developed, but I think that's something for us to identify anywhere where we feel like we are struggling to say no or to create real boundaries. What is the friction? What is the thing that might intercept my automatic response to doing this specific thing? I think it's interesting for us to do this little exercise of what are all of the things that have my attention, what of them are super valuable, and what of them might be my distractions in becoming who I want to be or even living the way that I want to live, and how can I incorporate a little bit of friction? Number 2, how much time are you spending in boredom, doing nothing, just being? Do you find yourself automatically grabbing for your phone when you're standing in line at the coffee shop, Does it immediately head into the bathroom with you when you are going that direction? When are the moments that you can just be in the presence of yourself? And I loved how they mentioned that this is when creativity and problem solving really are at its peak, when we are in these moments of not having our attention, taken towards something else. I know that I am more creative when I am going outside for a walk without my phone, or when I'm just simply sitting in meditation, that I have the best ideas that come through. And yet I'm also guilty of my phone robbing that attention from me. So a takeaway from me, and I hope for you, is spend a little more time being bored. And the third takeaway, can you turn it off and put it away? That thought can be scary for many of us. In fact, I heard at a recent comedy show that some of my friends attended that they required everybody to lock their phone away where they couldn't get it. And I think the sheer panic that many people feel in their bodies, just knowing that they can't have access to this, like, oh my gosh, what if somebody needs me? What if? We are so attached to always being connected that being disconnected feels unsafe. And in actuality, being constantly connected to that phone keeps us more in this fight or flight and not having our nervous system regulated. So can you turn it off and put it away for 10 minutes, 30 minutes, 2 hours?
Thanks for listening to the Conscious Habit Podcast. If you dug this episode, we'd love it if you would subscribe, rate, and review this podcast. And if you're into this consciousness thing, if you like this conversation and you want to meet more like-minded people, head on over to Facebook and join the Conscious Habit community. Until next time, do the world a favor and go love yourself.